The San Pedro Valley lay quiet under a pale spring sun, too quiet for a place that had seen what it had seen. Isaac Boone stood alone beside his cabin, a shovel in his hands and dirt under his fingernails. Behind him, 2 graves. Fresh-turned earth, wooden crosses. No names carved yet. 3 riders approached from the east, moving slow the way men do when they're not sure what they'll find. The one in front was Caleb Hargreaves. His left arm hung in a sling. His face carried the kind of damage that takes months to heal and years to forget. He stopped his horse 20 paces out and stared at those graves for a long time before he spoke. "They say you killed 2 men, Boone." Isaac didn't answer right away. Just stood there holding that shovel like a man who'd been interrupted mid-work. They say a lot of things. That afternoon something unexpected happened. Caleb Hargreaves came alone. No men, no horses except his own, no weapons visible except the standard rifle. Isaac watched him approach, trying to reconcile this man with the image Cooper had painted, a widower, a grieving husband, a mirror of himself. Hargreaves dismounted slowly, stood 20 feet from the cabin door, made no move to come closer. Isaac, Caleb, they stood looking at each other across the space. 2 men who'd lost everything on the same day, chosen different paths to survive it. "Cooper tell you?" Hargreaves asked quietly. "About Ellen?" "Yes." Hargreaves nodded. Something flickered across his face. Pain old and deep. "Then you know why I can't let this go. I know why you think you can't." Hargreaves's jaw tightened. "Don't presume to understand what I feel. I lost my wife and son that same morning." Isaac's voice was quiet. "I understand exactly what you feel." The words hung in the air. A shared wound exposed to daylight. Hargreaves looked away, stared at the horizon, like he could see the past there. "I wasn't there." His voice was rough. "I was in town, signing papers to expand my land." He paused, making deals to get richer. Another pause. "Ellen begged me to come with her that morning." He stopped, swallowed hard. Said the Peterson woman needed help. "I told her I had business." He stopped completely. "By the time I rode out there, she'd been dead for 3 hours." His voice broke. "They found her in the Petersons' kitchen. She tried to hide in the root cellar." Another pause. "With the Peterson children. Tried to save them." Isaac felt his chest tighten. The parallels were too close, too exact. "Did she save them?" he asked gently. "2 of them, the oldest boy, and the baby." Hargreaves's voice broke completely. "But Ellen," he couldn't finish. "They shot her when she wouldn't move away." His voice was barely audible. "Shot her 3 times. And left her there." Silence settled heavy between them. "I'm sorry," Isaac said. "Meaning it deeply, are you?" Hargreaves looked at him sharply. "Because it was your precious Apache friends who killed her." His voice went hard. "Your noble savages who put 3 bullets in my wife while she was protecting children. It wasn't them." Isaac gestured toward the cabin. "Nita and Dessane had nothing to do with that raid. They're Apache." "That's enough." "No, it's not." Hargreaves's face hardened. "You don't get to tell me what's enough, Isaac." His voice rose. "You don't get to tell me how to grieve." Another pause. "Or who to hate, or how to find peace." "You're right." Isaac's voice stayed calm. "But I can tell you this." He paused. "Hating them won't bring Ellen back." Another pause. "Won't make the pain less. Won't change what happened. It gives me something to do." "Besides drown in it, is that really what you want?" Isaac asked. "To become the kind of man who punishes innocent people because you couldn't save the ones you loved?" The question hit home. Isaac could see it in the way Hargreaves flinched, the way his hand gripped his saddle horn. "They're not innocent." But his voice had lost its certainty. "They defended themselves against a man trying to rape one." Isaac's voice was firm. "You know it." "I know it." He paused. "Every man who rides with you," Hargreaves said nothing. "This isn't about justice, Caleb." Isaac's voice was gentle. "This is about you needing someone to blame." He paused. "Someone to hurt. Because hurting them makes you feel like you're doing something. And what are you doing?" Hargreaves shot back. "Playing savior. Pretending that protecting them makes up for not protecting your family." The words cut deep. Isaac felt them slice through every defense. "Maybe," he admitted it, But at least I'm trying. To be something other than my worst day. Hargreaves stared at him for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like recognition. Then it hardened again. I came here to give you one last chance. His voice was flat. Send them away. Tonight. He paused. I'll give you my word. They can go north without pursuit. Another pause. I'll tell my men the matter's settled, and if I don't, then I come back. Hargreaves's voice went cold. With enough men to make sure this ends my way. Isaac felt the weight of the choice, the easy path and the right path, spreading out before him. I can't do that, he said. Can't or won't. Both. Hargreaves nodded slowly, like he'd expected this, but hoped for different. Then I'm sorry too, Isaac. His voice was tired. For what's coming. For what I have to do. He mounted his horse. Looked down at Isaac one last time. We could have been friends, you and I. His voice was sad. We understand each other in ways most men never will. We still could be. Isaac's voice was quiet. If you choose to be. No. Hargreaves turned his horse. I chose my path 3 years ago. He paused. Same as you. Now we both have to walk it. Another pause. To the end he rode away, leaving Isaac standing in his yard, with the knowledge that war was coming, and there was no way to stop it. The next day James Cooper came racing up to the cabin. His horse was at full gallop, pulled to a sliding stop. He dismounted before the animal fully halted. Isaac. He was breathing hard. Frightened in a way Isaac had never seen before. What is it? Cooper glanced at the cabin, at Dessane, who'd appeared in the doorway. Knife already drawn. You need to know something. His words came rapidly. Talked to old Reed in town this morning. He paused to breathe. He told me something. Something that changes everything. Spit it out, James. Cooper grabbed Isaac's arm. It's not just about them anymore. He gestured toward the cabin. Hargreaves has been buying up land parcels all over the valley. Another pause. Small pieces here and there. Building a monopoly on water rights. Isaac felt ice settle in his veins. Go on. Your land, Isaac. Your spring. Cooper's voice was urgent. It's the only year-round water source he doesn't control. He paused for breath. He's been working toward this for 2 years now. Buying. Pressuring. Manipulating. Another pause, getting everyone dependent on him. For water access, Cooper's grip tightened on Isaac's arm. He needs your land. Needs that spring. His voice dropped. Those Apache women? They're just an excuse. Another pause. A way to pressure you. A way to make you look unreasonable. He paused meaningfully. When he takes what he wants, Isaac pulled his arm free, walked a few steps away. Trying to process this, he's using his dead wife. Isaac's voice was flat. As cover for a land grab? I don't know if it started that way. Cooper's voice was careful. Maybe he really does want justice initially. He paused. Maybe the land grab came after. Another pause. But Reed says Hargreaves has been talking about consolidating the valley for months now. He paused. About bringing order and prosperity through unified control of resources, meaning his control. Exactly. Ike turned to look at his spring, the clear water flowing over smooth stones, life itself in a land that killed with thirst. He'd built everything here around that water, his cattle, his survival, his future, and Hargreaves wanted to take it. What happens if he gets it? Isaac asked quietly. Cooper's face was grim. He controls who drinks, who irrigates, who lives. He paused heavily. And who has to leave? He owns the valley. Isaac nodded slowly, understanding now. This was bigger than 2 Apache women, bigger than personal grief. This was about power, about one man's vision built on everyone's dependence. When's he coming? Isaac asked. Soon. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tonight. Cooper's voice shook slightly. He's gathering men from 3 towns over now. He paused, offering payment, promising grants if they support him. How many men? 12. Maybe 15. Against 3 people. Against Isaac, Dessane, and a woman still recovering from a wound. The math was simple. And brutal. James. Isaac's voice was quiet. You should go now. Don't come back here for a while. He paused. Don't get caught in the middle of this. Cooper hesitated, then nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Isaac, his voice was sad. I think you're doing the right thing. He paused, stupid. But right, that's something, I guess. After Cooper left, Isaac gathered Dessane and Nita together. "You heard?" They nodded. "Then you know what's coming." Isaac's voice was steady. "Probably tomorrow. Probably with enough men. That fighting is suicide." "We will fight anyway." Dessane's voice was firm. "I know you will." Isaac paused. "But I need you both to understand something." Another pause. "This isn't your fight anymore. This is about land and water and power." He paused meaningfully. "You're just the excuse he's using." Nita stepped forward. "Then let us leave. Let us remove the excuse. It won't matter now." Isaac shook his head. "Even if you go, Hargreaves will still come." He paused. "Still take what he wants. Only difference is whether I shall face him alone." Dessane and Nita exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. "Then we stay." Nita's voice was firm. "If we run forever." She paused. "If we stand, at least we stand for something that matters." Isaac felt something loosen in his chest, not relief. Something deeper, the knowledge that he wasn't alone, that he'd found people willing to stand beside him. "All right," his voice was quiet. "Then we prepare." They spent the rest of the day making ready. Isaac showed Dessane the best defensive positions around the cabin, showed her where the lines of sight were clearest, where cover was strongest and most protected. He gave Nita his spare rifle, taught her how to load it properly, how to aim, how to breathe and squeeze rather than pull the trigger. She learned quickly. Her hands were steady despite everything. As the sun began to set, Isaac stood alone. By his spring the water ran clear and cold, indifferent to human struggles. It had run before he came, would run long after he was gone. He thought about Martha, about Samuel, about 3 years of grief and isolation, of running from himself. He thought about Hargreaves, about shared wounds and different choices, about how 2 men could lose everything on the same day, and become completely different because of it. He thought about Nita and Dessane, about honor and obligation, and the strange bonds that form when people choose to stand together against impossible odds. And he thought about what came next, about violence and blood, and the possibility that this time tomorrow he'd be dead. The thought didn't frighten him as much as it should have, maybe because for the first time in 3 years he was choosing to stand instead of hide, choosing to fight for something instead of running from everything. Maybe this was what peace looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of purpose. Footsteps behind him. Nita. She stood beside him, watching the water flow. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly. "Terrified. But you will not run." "No." She nodded, satisfied with that answer. "Isaac Boone," her voice was gentle, "if we die tomorrow, I want you to know something." "What?" "You did not fail your family. By surviving," she paused, "you honored them. By learning to live again." Isaac felt tears prick his eyes. "How do you know?" "Because my father told me." Before he died, her voice was soft. "He said the dead do not want our grief." She paused. "They want our lives. They want us to keep living. The days they could not." She turned to face him fully. "Your wife and son, they would want this for you." She paused. "They would want you standing up for what's right." Another pause. "Fighting for people who need fighting for." She paused meaningfully. "Living like a man instead of a ghost." Isaac couldn't speak, just nodded. Nita squeezed his arm once, then left him alone with his thoughts and the setting sun and the water that ran eternal. That night none of them slept much. Isaac sat by the window, with his rifle across his knees, watching the darkness, waiting for the dawn that would bring violence. Dessane sharpened her knife one more time, the sound of stone on steel. Rhythmic and hypnotic, Nita sat at the table, hands folded, eyes closed, praying perhaps, or just to find stillness before the storm. Around midnight Dessane spoke. "Isaac." "Yes." "If I fall tomorrow, you must get Nita to safety." Her voice was firm. "Promise me this." Isaac looked at her, saw the warrior beneath the woman, saw someone who'd accepted death as a possibility, and made peace with it. "I promise, and if you fall, I will do the same, I know." Dessane nodded, satisfied. "Then we are ready." But they weren't. Not really. Nobody's ever ready. For what comes when violence arrives, they just had to be willing to face it anyway. Dawn came cold and clear, the kind of morning That makes everything sharp and defined. No fog to hide in, no clouds to soften the light. Perfect weather for what was coming. Isaac made coffee in silence. Made breakfast from dried venison. Went through the motions of normalcy, even though nothing about this day would be normal. Around mid-morning they heard it. Hoofbeats, many of them, coming from the south, at a steady pace. Isaac moved to the window, counted carefully, 12 riders. Hargreaves at the front, the rest spreading out, as they approached, forming a loose semicircle around the cabin. This was it. The moment everything changed. Isaac picked up his rifle, checked the load one more time, felt the weight of it in his hands. Dessane positioned herself by the east window, Nita at the west, creating overlapping fields of fire. The riders stopped 50 yards out, close enough to talk, far enough to avoid immediate danger. Hargreaves dismounted, walked forward alone, stopped at the property line, like crossing it would mean something. He wasn't ready to mean yet, Isaac Boone. His voice carried clear across the distance. I'm here with the authority of the Valley Council. He paused. You're harboring fugitives, protecting murderers, refusing lawful orders. Isaac stepped out onto the porch, rifle in his hands, but not raised. Not yet. I'm protecting innocent people. From a mob, he called back. That's all. That's not all, and you know it. Hargreaves's voice was hard. You're standing between me and what needs to be done. He paused. Between this valley and peace. Peace built on injustice. Isn't peace, Caleb. Isaac's voice was firm. It's just tyranny. Wearing a friendly face, Hargreaves's jaw tightened visibly. Last chance, Isaac. His voice rose. Send them out. Walk away. He paused. Keep your land, your life, your future. Another pause. All you have to do is stop protecting people who aren't worth dying for. Isaac felt the weight of the choice. One final time. The easy path, the safe side path, the path that led back to 3 more years of isolation and grief, and slowly dying inside. Then he thought about Martha's last words. Don't hide, Isaac. He raised his rifle, not aiming, just making his answer clear. No, his voice was clear and loud. They stay, and if you want them. He paused. You come through me. The valley went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Hargreaves stood very still. Then he turned and walked back to his men. Isaac knew what came next, knew it with the certainty of a man who'd chosen his ground and would stand on it, no matter the cost. He went back inside, closed the door, took his position at the window. Here they come. His voice was quiet, and outside 12 men began to move forward, coming to take what they wanted, coming to break what wouldn't bend, coming to teach Isaac Boone what it cost to choose right over safe. The 12 men moved forward slowly, not rushing, not charging, just walking their horses toward the cabin with the inevitability of a tide coming in. Isaac watched from the window, rifle ready, his heart hammered in his chest, but his hands stayed steady. 3 years of living alone had taught him many things. One was how to be afraid and still function, to staying crouched by the east window, rifle aimed, waiting. Her face was calm, focused. A warrior who'd accepted. What came next? Nita stood at the west window. Her hands shook slightly on the rifle Isaac had given her, but her jaw was set, determined. Wait for my signal, Isaac said quietly. Don't shoot unless they start it. The men stopped 30 yards out, close enough that Isaac could see their faces clearly. Some he recognized. Valley men. Men he'd traded with, nodded to in passing. Not outlaws or hired guns. Just ordinary people who'd been convinced this was necessary. That made it worse somehow. Hargreaves dismounted again, but this time he didn't walk forward alone. 3 men came with him. One of them carried a torch. Even though it was full daylight, the message was clear. Isaac, Hargreaves called out. This is your last chance, truly. He paused. Send those women out now, or we're coming in. To get them, Isaac opened the door, stepped out onto the porch, rifle held loose, but ready. You know I can't do that, Caleb. Can't or won't. Both. Hargreaves turned to his men, made a show of it, making sure they all heard. What came next? You all heard him. His voice was loud. Isaac Boone chooses to protect murderers over his neighbors. He paused. Over his valley, over the law itself. A murmur ran through the men. Some nodded, Others looked uncertain. One of them spoke up. A thick-set man Isaac didn't recognize. He spat into the dirt. "Then we take them." His voice was rough, angry. "Burn him out if we have to." Hargreaves held up a hand. "Wait, we do this by law." He paused. "We give him one more chance to—" "No more chances." Another man pushed forward. "Younger, drunk maybe, or just wound up too tight. You brought us here. To finish this, Hargreaves." He paused. "So let's finish it." Isaac saw it then. Saw the moment Hargreaves realized. He'd made a mistake. He'd gathered these men, stoked their anger, promised them resolution. Now they wanted blood, and wouldn't settle. For anything less, Hargreaves tried to regain control. "I said we do this properly." His voice rose. "We? You said they killed Tom Werther," the drunk man shouted. "You said they had to pay." He paused. "Well, are we making them pay, or are we standing here talking?" The mob energy shifted, grew uglier. Isaac felt it, like electricity in the air. Before a lightning strike, Hargreaves felt it too. "Listen to me." His voice was urgent, trying for authority. "We proceed carefully." "We?" But the drunk man wasn't listening anymore. He pulled a pistol from his belt, started walking toward the cabin. "I'm getting those Apache bitches. One way or another." He paused. "Rest of you can watch. If you want, stand down." Hargreaves commanded, but his voice cracked, lost its certainty. The drunk man kept walking. 2 others joined him. Then a fourth. Isaac raised his rifle, sighted down the barrel. "One more step, and I drop you." The drunk man laughed. Wild, reckless. "You going to shoot all of us, Boone?" He paused. "You going to murder 4 white men over some savages?" From inside the cabin, Dessane rifle barrel appeared in the window, pointed steady. At the drunk man's chest, the men stopped. Realized this was real, that Isaac and the women inside weren't bluffing for a moment. Everything hung in balance. Violence waiting to erupt, then it did. But not the way Isaac expected. The drunk man wheeled around, not toward Isaac, toward Hargreaves. "This is your fault," he screamed. "You brought us here." He paused. "You promised us justice, and now you're going soft." He raised his pistol, aimed it at Hargreaves. "If you won't finish this, we don't need you." Everything slowed down. Isaac saw Hargreaves' eyes widen, saw him step back, saw the other men shifting, uncertain which way to jump, saw the drunk man's finger tighten on the trigger. And in that frozen moment, Isaac saw something else. A small figure behind one of the wagons. A boy maybe 8 years old, dark hair, frightened eyes. Thomas Hargreaves, Caleb's son, watching his father about to be murdered. The choice came down to a single heartbeat. Isaac could let it happen. Let the drunk man shoot Hargreaves. Let the mob tear itself apart. In the chaos, he and the women could slip away. Problem solved. It was the smart play, the safe play. Then Thomas's face became Samuel's face, Isaac's son, watching. Helpless, Martha's words echoed. "Don't hide, Isaac." He moved without thinking, raised his rifle, fired a warning shot into the air. Above the drunk man's head, the crack of gunfire split the afternoon like thunder. Everyone froze. First man who moves. "Toward Hargreaves or my house." Isaac's voice was cold, certain. "Gets the next one." In his chest, he paused. "I don't care which side you're on." Another pause. "I don't care what you think. You came here to do." He paused meaningfully. "Nobody dies today unless you force it." The drunk man wavered, pistol still pointed at Hargreaves, but his eyes now on Isaac. "You're protecting him now?" His voice was confused. "After everything, I'm protecting a father from dying in front of his son." Isaac's voice was firm. "Same as I'd protect anyone." From that, the drunk man's eyes flicked to the wagon. Saw Thomas for the first time. Something changed in his face, shame maybe, or just the realization of what he'd almost done. He lowered his pistol slowly. The tension bled out of the moment, like air from a punctured skin. Then hoofbeats. Coming fast from the south, everyone turned. Old Reed rode in, like the wrath of God, 70 years old, but sitting his horse like a man half that age. Behind him 3 men from town, not fighters, merchants, craftsmen, but men whose voices carried weight. Reed pulled his horse to a stop, looked around at the assembled mob, at Hargreaves, at the drunk man, with his pistol, at Isaac on his porch, a smoking rifle. "What in the hell is going on here?" Reed's voice cracked. Like a whip. Nobody answered. The drunk man tried to hide, his pistol behind his back. Like a child caught stealing, Reed dismounted, walked straight to the middle of the standoff, with the fearlessness of a man who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. I asked a question. His voice was hard. "What is this?" Hargreaves found his voice first. "We're here to bring in fugitives." He paused. "To see justice done. For Tom Werther's death, Justice." Reed's eyebrows went up. "This look like justice to you?" He paused. "This looks like lynch mob they killed. Tom Werther tried to rape that Apache girl." Reed cut him off, his voice carrying. "To every man present. I talked to the Henderson boys yesterday." He paused. "They saw it happen." Another pause. "Saw Tom attack her. Saw her defend herself." He paused meaningfully. "They were too scared to say anything before." He paused. "But they told me this morning." Silence. Heavy and damning. Reed looked around. "At the men, any of you have daughters?" He let that sink in. "Sisters? Wives?" Another pause. "What did you do if a man tried to force himself on them?" He paused meaningfully. "Would you call it murder when they fought back?" More silence. Men looking at the ground, at their hands, anywhere but at Reed, or each other. "Go home," Reed said, not loud, but with absolute authority. "All of you." He paused. "This is done." Another pause. "If Caleb Hargreaves wants to pursue this legal," he paused, "he can take it. "To the territorial court." He paused meaningfully. "But there won't be any mob justice." He paused. "Not in my valley." Slowly, reluctantly, the men began to turn away, mounting horses, leaving. The drunk man was the last to go, shooting a look of pure hatred at Isaac, before riding off within 5 minutes. Only Reed and Hargreaves remained, and Thomas. Still hiding behind the wagon, Reed walked over. "To Isaac's porch you fired that warning shot?" "Yes, sir." "Saved Hargreaves's life." "Sounds like—" "Saved a boy from watching his father die." Isaac paused. "That's all." Reed studied Isaac's face, then nodded slowly. "You're a better man than most, Isaac Boone." "I doubt that." "I don't." Reed turned to go. Paused. "For what it's worth. Those women are welcome in town. If they need supplies." He paused. "Word is getting around." "About what really happened." Another pause. "Folks are ashamed. They believed Hargreaves's version." He mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Isaac and Hargreaves standing in the sudden quiet. Hargreaves looked shaken, pale. His hands trembled slightly as he stood there, processing what had almost happened. Thomas emerged from behind the wagon, ran to his father, clung to him. Hargreaves wrapped his good arm around his son, held him tight for a long moment. No one spoke. Then Hargreaves looked at Isaac. "You saved my life." Isaac said nothing. "After everything I did." Hargreaves's voice shook. "Everything I said." He paused. "You still—" He couldn't finish. "I didn't do it for you." Isaac's voice was quiet. "I did it for him." Hargreaves looked down at Thomas, at his son's frightened face, at what the boy had almost witnessed. Something broke in Hargreaves then. Isaac saw it happen, saw 3 years of rage and grief and misdirected pain finally crack open and let the light in. "I'm sorry." Hargreaves's voice was rough, broken. "I'm so sorry, Isaac." He paused. "For all of it, I know. Ellen wouldn't have wanted this." His voice cracked. "Wouldn't have wanted me to become—" He couldn't finish. "This—" Isaac stepped off the porch, walked toward Hargreaves and his son, stopped a few feet away. "It's not too late to be something else." His voice was gentle. "To choose different." Hargreaves nodded, tears running down his face now, not caring who saw. "I don't know how. Start by going home." Isaac's voice was firm. "Taking care of your boy." He paused, letting the hate go. Hargreaves looked at the cabin, at the windows, where Dessane and Nita watched. "I wanted them to pay." His voice was barely audible. "I wanted someone to pay. I know." Isaac's voice was understanding, but making them pay. "Won't bring Ellen back." He paused. "Won't make the pain less." Another pause. "It'll just make you less of who you were when she loved you." Hargreaves absorbed that, held his son tighter. "What if I can't let it go?" "Then let it go. A little at a time." Isaac's voice was steady. "One day, then another." He paused. "Keep choosing until choosing becomes who you are." Hargreaves nodded, started to turn away. "Stopped, Isaac." He paused. "About your land." "The water rights." He took a breath. I never actually filed. The claims, another pause, I was using it as leverage, but... He stopped. I'll withdraw the attempts. He paused. Your spring stays yours, thank you. It's the least I can do. After you saved my life, you don't owe me. For that, yes. Hargreaves's voice was firm. I do. He mounted his horse, lifted Thomas up. In front of him, I'm leaving the valley. Hargreaves's voice was quiet, taking Thomas east. He paused. Starting over somewhere. He doesn't have to grow up. Another pause. In the shadow. Of my mistakes. That's probably wise, will you? Hargreaves hesitated. Will you tell those women I'm sorry? He paused. For what I put them through. Tell them yourself. If you want. Hargreaves looked at the cabin again, then shook his head. No, his voice was sad. Some apologies come too late to matter. He paused. They don't need to hear. From me. Another pause. They just need to be left. In peace he rode away. Thomas looking back once at Isaac, small hand raised. In tentative wave, Isaac waved back. Then he turned and walked toward his cabin, toward the two women, who'd stood with him, who'd been willing to die, rather than run. Inside, Dessane lowered her rifle, let out a breath. She'd been holding. You saved him. Not quite a question. I saved a boy. From watching his father die, Nita set her rifle down, came to stand. In front of Isaac, you chose right. Her voice was soft. Isaac felt the weight of the day settle into his bones, the fear, the tension, the moment when everything could have gone. To blood and chaos I chose not to hide. His voice was quiet. That's all. That night they didn't celebrate, didn't mark the victory they'd won. Just sat quietly in the cabin as the fire burned low and the darkness gathered outside. Tomorrow would bring questions, consequences, the aftermath of choices made. But tonight they were alive, together. Safe for now, that was enough. 3 days passed before anyone else came. James Cooper rode up cautiously, like he expected to find graves and burned ruins. Instead he found Isaac, mending a fence, Dessane sharpening tools, Nita hanging laundry in the morning sun. You're alive. Cooper sounded surprised. So far, what happened? Isaac told him, the short version, the mob, the near violence. Hargreaves almost being shot by his own men, old Reed intervening. Cooper listened without interrupting. When Isaac finished, he was quiet. For a long moment, words spreading, he finally said, about what really happened. With Tom Werther, he paused. About Hargreaves trying to take your land. Another pause. Folks are ashamed. He paused. Some are angry at themselves for following him. Good. Hargreaves left yesterday. Cooper's voice was quiet. Him and his boy. He paused. Heading east. Another pause. Sold his holdings. To the Valley Cooperative. He paused. Put the money in trust. For Thomas. Isaac nodded. Glad Hargreaves had found the strength to leave, to choose his son. Over his grief. What about the two women? Cooper asked. What about them? Are they staying? Isaac looked toward the cabin, saw Nita working. Strong now, healed for a while longer. At least, Cooper smiled slightly. Good, his voice was warm. Valley could use. Some decent people, after Cooper left. Dessane came to find Isaac. We need to talk. Her voice was serious. They walked out. To the spring together. The water ran clear and cold, same as it always had. Indifferent to human drama. My oath is fulfilled. Dessane's voice was firm. Nita is safe. She paused. She is healed. Another pause. She is free. To choose her path, Isaac felt something tighten. In his chest, you're leaving? Yes. Dessane's voice was steady. I have other obligations. She paused. Other oaths to keep. When? Tomorrow morning. Isaac nodded. He'd known this was coming. Had known from the beginning that Dessane was never staying. But knowing didn't make it easier. Will you be safe? He asked. Going alone? Dessane smiled slightly, the first real smile. Isaac had seen from her. I am always alone. She paused. And I am always safe. That night Dessane and Nita spoke. For hours in Apache. Isaac gave them privacy. Sat outside under the stars and listened to the murmur of their voices. Through the cabin walls, around midnight, Nita came out. Sat beside him. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. She is like a sister to me. Nita's voice was thick. The only family I have left, I know, but she is right to go. Nita paused. Her path is not mine. Any more? Isaac waited. I asked her. What I should do, Nita continued, whether I should go with her, or stay here, she paused, or travel alone, to find our people. What did she say? She said, I already know. The answer, Nita's voice was quiet. I am just afraid. To speak it, Nita turned to look at Isaac. In the starlight, I want to stay. Her voice was firm. Not because I owe you. She paused. Not because I have. Nowhere else to go. Another pause. But because I choose to. Isaac felt his throat tighten. You're sure? Yes. Nita's voice was certain. If you will have me, I would be honored. They sat in comfortable silence. The night vast and quiet. Around them it will not be easy. Nita's voice was realistic. The valley will talk, she paused. We'll judge. Let them. You may regret this choice. I've regretted running away, more than I've ever regretted. Standing my ground, Nita took his hand. Squeezed it once. Then we will stand together. Morning came cold and clear. Dessane packed what little she had, checked her weapons, prepared for a journey Isaac suspected she'd been preparing for all along. Before she left, she called Isaac and Nita together. From a pouch at her belt she pulled a thin leather band marked with symbols Isaac didn't recognize. Old symbols, powerful ones. This marks you as Tess, she said to Isaac. Protector. She paused, bound by honor, to Nita, and through her. To our people she tied it around his wrist, the leather warm, from being close. To her body, if any of my people see this. Her voice was firm. They will know. You are trusted. She paused. No, you stand with us. Another pause. Not against us. I don't deserve this. Isaac's voice was humble. You earned it. Dessane's voice was certain. You earned it. When you chose to help us. She paused. When you stood against those men. Another pause. When you chose right. Every time the choice was offered, she turned to Nita, pulled her into an embrace. They spoke in Apache. Quick words Isaac couldn't follow, but whose emotion was universal. Farewell between sisters, who would likely never meet again. When they separated, both had tears on their faces. Dessane mounted her horse, looked down at them. One last time, Isaac Boone. Nita, her voice was strong. You walk a hard path together? She paused. But it is a good path. Another pause. One of honor. Where will you go? Isaac asked. North. To the high country. Dessane's voice was steady. To find what remains. Of our people. She paused, and help them survive. What comes next? Will we see you again? Dessane smiled. Sad but genuine in this life. Or the next. She paused. We are bound now. Another pause. We will meet again. She turned her horse, rode north, toward the distant mountains, toward whatever oaths and obligations called her. They watched until she disappeared into the trees, until even the sound of hoofbeats faded to nothing. Then they were alone, Isaac and Nita, standing in the yard that suddenly felt both emptier and fuller than before. What do we do now? Nita asked quietly. Isaac looked around at his land, his spring, his cattle. 3 years of solitary work that now had the possibility of becoming something more. We live. His voice was simple. We work, we build. He paused. We face whatever comes. Together, Nita nodded. Then we should start. They did. Days turned to weeks. The valley settled back into its rhythms. Some people visited, cautiously at first, then with more ease, bringing news, trading goods, slowly accepting that Isaac Boone had an Apache woman living on his land, and it wasn't their business to judge. Some never came around, kept their distance, kept their disapproval. Isaac didn't care. He'd spent 3 years caring what people thought, what they'd say, if he moved wrong, or spoke wrong, or failed wrong. Now he was done with that, done with living. For ghosts and judgments, he had work to do, land to tend, a future to build, and he wasn't building it alone anymore. 4 weeks after Dessane left, on a morning when spring was starting to warm the valley from winter's grip, Isaac Boone woke to find Caleb Hargreaves riding up to his cabin. For a moment old tension flared, old fear. Then Isaac saw Hargreaves's face, saw that he came alone, unarmed except for the rifle every rider carried, came in peace. Isaac stepped out onto the porch. Caleb, Isaac, Hargreaves dismounted, moved slower than before, like at age weeks since Isaac had seen him. I'm leaving the valley today. He paused. For good. Another pause. Wanted to come by first. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. They stood looking at each other, across the space between them. So much had happened in this yard, so much violence almost unleashed, so much pain almost inflicted. I need to know. What happened? Hargreaves's voice was quiet. After I left, he paused. After everything settled, Isaac gestured to the cabin. Come inside. His voice was calm. I'll tell you, and that was when. It came full circle, when the story Isaac had been telling, in his cabin. Coffee growing cold. Finally caught up to the present moment. Hargreaves sat across from Isaac, at the rough wooden table, the same table, where Isaac had sat, with Dessane and Nita, where they'd planned their defense, where they'd become something like family. The graves outside, Hargreaves said again, You said 2 men, from the mob? Yes. Isaac's voice was steady. They came back. 3 nights after you left. He paused. Drunk, angry, another pause, wanting to finish what they'd started. Isaac took a slow drink of coffee. Dessane was still here. He paused. She and I, another pause. We defended our home. You killed them. They gave us no choice. Hargreaves nodded slowly. Understanding. Where's Dessane now? Gone north. Isaac's voice was quiet. To find her people. He paused. She left about a week ago. And Nita? Isaac met his eyes. She chose to stay. Something flickered across Hargreaves's face. Not judgment, not disapproval, just recognition. You love her. It wasn't a question. Isaac thought about it, about love and what it meant, about Martha and Samuel, and grief that never fully healed, about Nita, and the quiet strength she'd brought into his life. I respect her. His voice was thoughtful. I trust her. He paused. I'm grateful for her presence. Another pause. Whether that's love or something else, I don't know yet. He paused meaningfully. But it's enough. Hargreaves stood, moved to the window, looked out at the valley, spreading wide and indifferent. Under the spring sun, I'm taking Thomas to St. Louis. His voice was quiet. Starting over there. He paused. Got family who'll help us. That's good. I wanted to thank you. Hargreaves turned from the window. For saving my life. He paused. For showing me I'd become something Ellen wouldn't recognize. You don't need to thank me. Yes. Hargreaves's voice was firm. I do. He turned from the window. You could have let me die, Isaac. His voice was serious. Would have been easier for you. He paused, smarter even. Another pause. You didn't. He paused. You chose to save me, even though I'd tried. To destroy you, I didn't save you. For you. Isaac's voice was quiet. I saved you. For Thomas. He paused. For the man. You could still choose to be, I know. Hargreaves's voice was humble. But I'm thanking you anyway. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Hargreaves extended his hand. Isaac took it, shook once. Firm and final. Goodbye, Isaac Boone. Hargreaves's voice was sincere. I hope you find the peace you're looking for. Same to you, Caleb. Hargreaves left, rode away toward whatever future waited for him in St. Louis, or oblivion, or something in between. Isaac watched him go, then turned to find Nita standing in the doorway. Is it finished? She asked. Yes. Isaac's voice was certain. It's finished. She came to stand beside him. They looked out at the valley, together, at land that had seen violence but was healing, at a spring that kept flowing, regardless of human drama, at cattle grazing and clouds moving, and the endless cycle of seasons turning. What do we do now? Nita asked. Isaac thought about it, about all the choices that had led to this moment, about running and hiding, and finally learning to stand. We work. His voice was simple. We live. He paused. We let tomorrow come in its own time. That is a good plan. The cold had come down wrong that February, not the deep cold you expect and prepare for. This was late winter cold that cut through wool like paper, sharp and mean and unexpected. Isaac Boone had been tracking a deer for 2 hours straight. His breath turned white in the frozen air. His fingers ached inside thick gloves. But the deer was big and healthy. Winter meat was winter meat, regardless of when winter decided to arrive. He found fresh prints near the frozen river bank. The deer had paused here to drink. The tracks were no more than an hour old. Then he heard it. 3 shots in rapid succession, silence. Then more shot, deliberate and final. The sound came from the south. maybe half a mile distant, echoing off the valley walls the way gunfire does. Isaac stopped walking, stopped breathing for just a moment. Every instinct told him the same thing. Turn around, go home. Other people's trouble becomes your trouble. He stood there in the failing light. The deer was forgotten. His hands tightened on his rifle. Then he heard voices, men's voices. Distant, but getting closer through the trees, Isaac made a choice. Later he would wonder why. Later he would trace it back to something broken inside. But in that moment he didn't think. He just moved south, toward the gunfire. Toward whatever trouble was brewing. He found the blood first, dark against thin snow that shouldn't have been there, still wet enough to gleam in the fading light. A trail leading through brush toward the river bend. Not a lot of blood, but enough to know someone was hurt badly. The voices grew clearer as he followed the trail. They came this way. Spread out now, another voice. They can't have gone far, not bleeding like that, a third voice. Hargreaves wants them brought back. Alive if we can manage it, Isaac moved quietly through the underbrush. Years of hunting had taught him how to step without sound, how to read sign even in poor light. The blood trail led to a thicket of willow and rock. Good cover if you needed to hide. Good cover if you needed to die alone and unseen. He pushed through willow branches carefully. Saw her immediately. A young Apache woman collapsed against the rocks. Her shoulder was dark with blood where a bullet had grazed her. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing came shallow and labored. 10 feet away crouched another woman, older, maybe 30. She hid behind a boulder with a knife in her hand. Her eyes tracked Isaac's every movement like a wolf deciding whether to run. For a long moment nobody moved, nobody breathed. Isaac could hear the searchers getting closer now, crashing through brush, making enough noise to wake the dead. The woman with the knife spoke in English. "Leave us." Her accent was slight but present. Isaac looked at the blood on the younger woman's shoulder, looked at how still she lay, looked at the older woman's eyes, saw exhaustion beneath the defiance there. He thought about the searchers behind him, thought about Hargreaves's name being invoked, thought about how easy it would be to walk away. That's when the memory came. Just a flash, no more than a second long, standing in his own yard 3 years ago, hearing gunfire in the distance, making a choice to wait instead of riding toward it, finding his wife and son dead when he finally arrived. The flash passed, left him standing in the present with a choice. "I have a cabin." His voice was quiet but firm. "Half a mile north. You'll die here if you stay." The woman with the knife didn't move, didn't blink or lower her weapon. "Why would you help us?" Isaac didn't have a good answer for that question. "Was sure he ever would." "Because I'm tired of walking away," he said simply. The searchers were very close now. Isaac could see torchlight flickering between trees, could hear individual voices calling to each other. The woman with the knife looked at her companion, looked back at Isaac, made her choice in a heartbeat. "Help me carry her." Isaac moved fast, lifted the unconscious woman as gently as he could. She was lighter than expected, all bone and sinew and will. The blood on her shoulder soaked into his coat immediately. The older woman grabbed their few belongings, a leather pack, a rolled blanket, nothing else worth carrying. They moved north through darkness, with searchers growing louder behind them. Isaac knew these woods better than his own hands, knew every game trail and dry creek bed, knew where ground was soft enough to leave tracks. He led them along rock shelves where the river had cut deep, led them through stands of pine where needles muffled every footstep, led them away from voices and torchlight and violence. 20 minutes later they reached his cabin. It sat low in a clearing, built from timber and stone and pure necessity. Smoke rose from the chimney into cold night air. Isaac kicked the door open, carried the young woman inside carefully, laid her near the hearth where the fire burned steady. The older woman followed, knife still in her hand, eyes still tracking everything with predatory focus. Isaac built up the fire without speaking a word, set water to heat in a pot, found clean cloth and whiskey, found the herbs he kept for injuries. Only then did he turn to face the woman. My name is Isaac Boone. This is my land. My cabin." He paused. "You're safe here for now." She studied him for a long moment, testing his words against experience. "My name is Dessane." She nodded toward the unconscious woman. "She is Nita. Is she your sister?" Desane's eyes flickered. Something passed across her face, too quick to read. Yes, it wasn't quite a lie. But it wasn't the whole truth either. Isaac let it stand. Questions could wait for later. Right now the young woman by his fire was dying. Questions wouldn't stop that from happening. They went to work. Isaac checking fence lines. Nita tending the small garden she'd started, moving through the rhythms of daily life. That built something larger than any single day. Around noon they broke for water, sat together by the spring, and rested. "Isaac," Nita's voice was soft. "Yes?" "Thank you." She paused, "for letting me stay." Another pause, for giving me a place to belong. Isaac looked at her, at this woman, who'd come into his life, half frozen and hunted, who'd shown him. That courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to stand despite it. "Thank you." His voice was sincere. "For teaching me how to live again." They sat in comfortable silence, the water running clear and cold, the sun warm. On their faces the valley spreading out. Around them, in all its harsh beauty, somewhere north, Dessane rode, toward her destiny somewhere east. Hargreaves sought redemption with his son. But here, in this moment, Isaac Boone and Nita sat together by a spring in the San Pedro Valley, and felt something like peace settle into the spaces where grief had lived. For too long the frontier didn't ask people to be perfect, it asked them to choose. Isaac had chosen, again and again, when choosing would have been easier than standing, when hiding would have been safer than helping, when running would have been smarter than staying. He'd chosen to help. 2 women dying in the cold, chosen to protect them, when protection meant risking everything, chosen to stand, when standing made him a target, chosen to save a man who tried to destroy him. Not because the choices were easy, but because they were right. And now, sitting beside Nita, with the sun climbing, toward afternoon, he understood something. Martha had tried to tell him 3 years ago. Redemption wasn't erasing the past, wasn't fixing what couldn't be fixed. It was choosing, day after day, to be more than your failures, to stand more than you ran, to help more than you hid. It was learning. That courage wasn't fearlessness. It was being terrified and standing anyway. It was accepting that you couldn't save everyone, but you could save someone, and sometimes that was enough. The afternoon wore on. The work continued. The land demanded attention and received it, as the sun began its descent toward the western ridge. Isaac and Nita stood together at the fence line, looking out at cattle that needed tending, at grass that needed grazing, at a future that needed building. Tomorrow why should check the north pasture, Isaac said, and repair the lean-to before the summer storms, and maybe start planning where to expand the garden. Nita smiled. Small but genuine, so many tomorrows to plan for. "Yes, I am glad. I will be here to see them." Isaac took her hand, squeezed it once. "So am I." They turned together and walked back toward the cabin, toward warmth and shelter and the promise of another day survived, another choice made, another step away from the ghosts that had haunted them both. Behind them the valley settled into evening, the light going golden, then amber, then slowly fading to shadow, stars beginning to appear one by one in the darkening sky. The San Pedro Valley had seen violence and grief and loss, had witnessed the worst of what people could do to each other when fear and anger took the reins, but it had also witnessed something quieter but no less powerful. It had witnessed a man choosing to stand instead of hide, choosing to help instead of ignore, choosing to build instead of destroy. It had witnessed 2 people from different worlds finding common ground in honor and courage and the simple act of choosing right over easy. And as the darkness gathered and the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, the valley held that story, kept it safe, preserved it for whoever might need to hear it. The story of Isaac Boone and the winter choice, the story of how a man can lose everything and still find a way. to live the story of how the frontier doesn't care about perfection, only about choosing, and standing by those choices, when the cost comes due that night. As Isaac lay in his bedroll and listened to the familiar sounds of his cabin, settled into sleep, he thought about Martha and Samuel. What? Not with the crushing grief that had defined 3 years of his life, but with something softer. Something that felt like gratitude, mixed with sorrow, love mixed with acceptance. They were gone. Nothing would bring them back. Nothing would make that right. But he was still here, still breathing, still choosing to live each day with purpose, instead of just surviving, and maybe that was what they would have wanted. Not for him, to spend his life grieving, but to spend it living, really living, with all the joy and pain and difficult choices that came with it. He closed his eyes, let sleep come. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges, new choices to make. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Isaac Boone slept, without nightmares, without the weight of guilt crushing his chest, without the voice in his head asking why he hadn't done more, been better, chosen differently. Tonight he slept the sleep of a man who'd finally forgiven himself, not by forgetting, not by pretending. The past didn't matter, but by choosing every day to be someone his lost family would recognize, would respect, would be proud of. The winter that shouldn't have come had passed, spring was taking hold, and in the San Pedro Valley life went on. Hard, beautiful, unforgiving, precious, exactly as it should be. The frontier didn't ask men to be perfect. It asked them to choose and then to live with those choices, day after day, until the choosing became who they were. Isaac Boone made his choice on a cold river bank one winter, and he stood by it when the cost came due. Some say that's redemption, others call it foolishness. Out here we just called it living. Isaac knelt beside Nita and examined the wound with careful hands. The bullet had cut a deep groove across her shoulder, but it hadn't lodged in the muscle. That was good news, at least. Less good was the cold that had gotten into her bones. Her skin felt like ice when he touched it. Her lips had taken on a blue tint. That color meant time was running short. I need to clean this. Isaac looked at Dessane. It's going to hurt her badly. Desane's expression didn't change. Do it. Isaac worked carefully but quickly. Cleaned the wound with whiskey. Nita's body jerked even though she was unconscious. He packed the wound with herbs that fought infection. Bound it tight with clean cloth. All the while Dessane watched, never more than 5 feet away, never relaxing her guard or lowering her knife. When Isaac finished, he wrapped Nita in every blanket he owned, positioned her as close to the fire as was safe. Then he sat back on his heels. She needs warmth more than anything now. His voice was quiet, and rest and luck. Dessane nodded once. Then she positioned herself between Isaac and Nita, making her intentions clear without needing words. Isaac understood perfectly, rose slowly, kept his visible at all times, moved to the far side of the cabin, far enough to avoid crowding, close enough to help if things went wrong. You should rest too, he said from his spot. Dessane's expression didn't flicker. I will watch. I know you will. But you can't watch forever. Isaac settled against the wall. Eventually you'll have to decide if you trust me. I have decided. Dessane's voice was flat. I do not trust you. But I need you. She paused. There is a difference. Isaac almost smiled at that brutal honesty. Fair enough. The night settled in around them like a heavy blanket. The fire crackled and popped. Outside wind picked up. It tested the walls and found them solid enough. Isaac sat against his wall, watched Dessane watch him. Neither spoke for hours. Neither slept despite exhaustion pulling at them both. Somewhere past midnight Nita's breathing changed, became ragged and uneven. Isaac moved without thinking, crossed the room in 3 long strides, knelt beside her and felt her forehead with his palm, burning hot now. The fever had come on fast, fighting one kind of death by inviting another. Dessane's hand went to her knife handle, but she didn't draw it, just watched Isaac check Nita's pulse, adjusted her blankets with careful hands, wet a cloth with cool water. Fever. Isaac stated the obvious. Her body's fighting. That's good, actually. He laid the wet cloth on her forehead. "But we need to keep it from going too high." He worked through the long night, cooling her when she burned, warming her when she shivered with cold. Forcing water between her lips when she was conscious enough, Dessane helped without being asked, silent and efficient, following Isaac's lead when it came to keeping Nita alive, even as her eyes promised violence if he gave reason to doubt. Dawn came slowly. Gray light crept through the single window. The fever broke just as light touched the cabin walls. Nita's eyes opened, unfocused at first, confused about where she was. Then they found Isaac's face, went sharp with something between fear and assessment. She said something in Apache. Low and rough with pain, Dessane answered her quickly, also in Apache. A quick exchange Isaac couldn't follow at all. Then Nita's eyes came back to him, held steady despite exhaustion, despite pain, despite everything she'd been through. "Why?" she asked. The word came out barely louder than breathing. Isaac sat back on his heels. That question again, the one he still couldn't answer well. "Because you were still breathing," he said finally. Nita stared at him hard, trying to read truth from a stranger's face, in a stranger's house, in a world that gave her every reason not to trust. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her, or maybe she was just too tired to care any more. Her eyes drifted closed again, but her breathing was steadier now, deeper and more regular. The sleep of healing rather than dying. Dessane looked at Isaac across Nita's sleeping form. Something in her posture had changed slightly. Not trust, not yet, but perhaps the first shadow of it. "You can stop now," she said quietly. Isaac shook his head. "Not done yet. Why?" He stood slowly, moved to the window, looked out at the valley, at the sun climbing higher and burning away night mist. "Because if I stop now, I'll have to live with that." His voice was quiet. "And I'm tired of living with things I didn't do." The morning passed in careful quiet. Nita slept deeply. Her fever stayed gone. Her breathing remained steady and strong. Isaac made coffee in silence, made breakfast from dried venison and hard bread, set out his winter stores. Food meant for one, but now feeding three. Dessane watched everything with sharp attention, noted where he kept supplies, noted where weapons were stored. A warrior cataloging a battlefield. Around noon, hoofbeats approached from the south. Just one rider, Isaac heard them first, froze at the stove with a pan in hand. His whole body went tense. Dessane heard them a second later. Her knife was out instantly. She moved to the window. "One rider." Isaac listened carefully. "Coming slow, not rushing. Your friends?" Dessane's voice carried an edge. "I don't have friends out here." Isaac set the pan down. "But I have a trader. Comes through every couple weeks. If you warn them we are here." "Then you'll kill me." Isaac finished her sentence. "I know that." He met her eyes directly. "But you won't have to. I'm not telling anyone. Why should I believe you?" Isaac looked at Nita sleeping by the fire. "Because I spent all night keeping her alive. Could have let her die. Would have saved me considerable trouble." He moved toward the door. "That bought me some trust. At least enough for one conversation." Dessane held his gaze, then nodded once. "Stay where I can see you clearly." Isaac opened the door as James Cooper was dismounting. Cooper was Old Valley, 60 years at least. A trader's shrewd eyes, a traveler's weathered face. "Isaac." Cooper nodded in greeting. "Didn't expect to find you home today. Where else would I be?" "Fair point there." Cooper tied his horse to the rail. "Brought your tobacco. Some coffee, if you're buying. Come in, inside." Dessane had moved into the corner, knife put away, but her body language was clear. "Don't look at me. Don't mention me. Don't make this a problem." Cooper saw her immediately, saw Nita sleeping by the fire, saw the whole situation in one glance, had the sense to keep his face neutral. "Coffee would be good," he said. Like nothing was unusual here, Isaac poured 2 cups. The men sat at the table. Cooper pulled out his tobacco, his ledger. Started talking prices like this was any normal visit. But after a few minutes his voice dropped lower. "There was trouble yesterday. South of here." He glanced at Isaac. "Men from town rode out looking for Apache women." Isaac kept his face still. "That's they'd stolen horses. Maybe killed someone." Cooper's eyes flickered toward Dessane briefly. Hargreaves led them out personally. They came back empty-handed around midnight. He paused, angry. What were they doing on my land exactly? Cooper met his eyes. Didn't say they were on your land specific? Another pause. Just said they tracked them north along the river. Isaac nodded slowly, sipped his coffee. Well, I haven't seen anyone pass through here. It was the first lie he'd told in 3 years. It came out smooth as truth. Cooper studied him carefully, knowing full well it was a lie, knowing also that Isaac Boone wasn't a man who lied lightly. That's good. Cooper's voice was careful, because Hargreaves is asking questions in town now, making it known that anyone harboring those women would be involved. He stressed the last word. Involved how exactly? He didn't specify the details. But you know Caleb Hargreaves. Cooper finished his coffee. He doesn't make threats he won't back up eventually. Isaac did know. Caleb Hargreaves was respected throughout the valley, had land, had money, had influence that mattered. When he spoke, people listened carefully. When he suggested something needed doing, it got done. Cooper stood to leave. I'll be back through in 10 days or so. He moved toward the door. If you need anything before then, you know where to find me. Thanks, James. At the door, Cooper paused, looked back with something like concern. Be careful, Isaac. Whatever you're doing here, be very careful. Then he was gone, hoofbeats fading south toward the next homestead. Taking news and tobacco and the knowledge of what he'd seen, Isaac closed the door. Turned to find Dessane standing now. He will tell them, she said flatly. Maybe. Maybe not. Isaac moved back to the stove. Cooper's been in the valley longer than most folks. He knows when to see things. He paused. And when not to. You are risking everything for us. Why? Isaac looked at Nita, still sleeping by the fire. Looked at Dessane with her warrior's eyes. Her refusal to show fear. I don't know yet, he said honestly. Ask me again in a week or so. 2 days passed in uneasy quiet. Nita grew stronger hour by hour. The wound on her shoulder healed clean. No infection set in despite the cold and dirt. She still didn't speak much. Just watched everything with those sharp eyes. Learning the cabin. Learning Isaac's patterns. Learning whether to trust or run. Dessane remained vigilant as always. Always positioned between Isaac and Nita. Always aware of where the knife was. But the raw hostility had softened slightly. On the 3rd day, Isaac showed Dessane his herbs. Explained which ones fought fever. Which ones eased pain. Which could be made into tea. Dessane listened without comment. Memorized everything, asked no questions. But her eyes said she understood perfectly. We will not long, she said, when the lesson ended. Isaac nodded. I wouldn't expect you to. Where we go next is not your concern at all. I know that. Dessane studied him with those measuring eyes. You are not like other white men I have known before. I'm exactly like them. Isaac's voice was quiet. I just made different choices. That's all. That afternoon, Nita surprised Isaac by sorting dried beans. Her movements were slow but precise. Small, careful stitches in daily life. Saying she wouldn't be helpless here. You don't have to do that, Isaac told her. She looked up. Held his gaze for a long moment. Then went back to sorting without a word. Isaac understood. This wasn't about obligation or gratitude. This was about dignity. About contributing something. He left her to it. On the 5th day, Caleb Hargreaves came. This time he wasn't friendly. Isaac was outside splitting wood. Heard the horses long before they arrived. 3 of them moving at a steady, purposeful pace. He set the axe down. Waited. Hargreaves rode at the front. 2 men flanked him on either side. Not ranch hands. Town men. The kind who wore authority like a badge. Hargreaves didn't dismount this time. Stayed in the saddle. Looking down at Isaac, with suspicion and concern mixed together. Isaac, Caleb. We had an incident last week. Hargreaves shifted his weight. I believe James Cooper may have mentioned it to you. He mentioned something about it, yes. Hargreaves's horse stepped sideways. He corrected it with practiced ease. 2 Apache women escaped from custody. They were being held pending investigation. He paused deliberately. Into the theft of horses from the Fletcher ranch. Isaac kept his face completely neutral, his voice level and calm. I don't know anything about that. One of my men died. Hargreaves continued, like Isaac hadn't spoken at all. Tom Werther. He'd worked for me for 5 full years. Another pause. Left a wife and 2 children behind. The words landed heavy, deliberate. Hargreaves was building his case piece by careful piece. That's hard. Isaac's voice didn't change. Losing a good man, it is. Hargreaves leaned forward in his saddle slightly. Which is why I need to find those women specifically. To see justice done properly, he paused. You understand? I understand you want to find them. Have you seen them, Isaac? The question was direct. No room for misunderstanding. Isaac looked Hargreaves in the eye. No, it was his second lie. It came harder than the first one had. Hargreaves held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly, like he didn't quite believe it but had no proof. If you do see them, you need to understand something. Hargreaves's voice went harder. They're dangerous. They murdered a man in cold blood. He let that sink in. Anyone who helps them becomes part of that crime. Becomes involved. There was that word again. Involved. The way Hargreaves said it made it sound like a disease. I'll keep that in mind, Isaac said carefully. Hargreaves straightened in his saddle, preparing to leave. But something made him pause. You still getting water from that spring back there? The change in subject felt calculated. Year-round flow is rare in this valley. Isaac felt something cold settle in his chest. The spring was his land's greatest asset. Without it, cattle couldn't survive the summer months. It's enough, he said. I'm sure it is. Hargreaves smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Good water makes good land. Good land makes a man prosperous. He paused meaningfully. If he's careful, the implication was crystal clear. Hargreaves wasn't just looking for Apache women. He was looking at Isaac's land, at his water, at everything Isaac had built over 3 years. I'm always careful, Isaac said quietly. I hope so. Hargreaves turned his horse. Because the valley's changing, Isaac. It's not safe to stand alone any more out here. He looked back. A man needs to choose his side. Before the choosing gets done for him, the 3 riders left at the same unhurried pace. But their visit had changed something fundamental. Made the threat explicit and real. Made Isaac's choices matter in ways they hadn't before. Inside the cabin, Dessane stood by the window. She'd heard every word, he knows, she said flatly. Maybe he just suspects. There is no difference to a man like that. Dessane turned to face him. Not to a man with power. Isaac moved to the stove, poured coffee he didn't want. Just needed something to do with his hands. Tell me about Tom Werther, he said quietly. Dessane's jaw tightened visibly. You want to know if we killed him. I want to know what happened exactly. Dessane was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was empty of everything except fact. We were running. Trying to reach our people in high country. She paused. Werther found us at a river crossing. He had a rifle. Another pause. He told us to stop. To come with him. She looked at Nita, who had stopped sorting beans, was staring at her hands. Nita tried to talk to him, to explain we had done nothing wrong. Dessane's voice went hard. He didn't want to talk. He wanted things that were not his to take. Isaac felt his hands tighten on the coffee cup. Go on. Nita fought him. I heard her scream. Came running fast. Dessane met Isaac's eyes. By the time I got there, he had torn her dress. Her voice was flat. Had his hands on her. She was bleeding from where he hit her. Dessane's gaze didn't waver. No apology there. No regret at all. I killed him. With this knife right here, she touched the handle at her belt, and I would do it again without hesitation. Isaac set the coffee cup down with great care. Where's the body now? In the river. We weighted it with stones and let it go. Dessane's voice stayed flat. It may have washed downstream by now, or gotten caught in rocks. And the horses you supposedly stole? We took nothing. They lied about it. Dessane's eyes were hard. Hargreaves lied. Isaac believed her completely. He'd seen enough of the world to know. Knew how these stories got written. How men with power shaped truth. Why did Hargreaves want you in custody originally? He asked. Dessane glanced at Nita again. Some silent communication passed between them. That is not for me to tell, she said finally. Isaac nodded. Secrets within secrets. Lies built on top of lies carefully. He was caught in the middle of something he didn't understand, protecting women he barely knew. From men who had law and money on their side, the smart thing would be to send them away tonight, before Hargreaves came back with more men. More questions. The smart thing. Isaac looked at Nita, saw her staring at her hands still, saw shame she was trying to hide behind silence, saw a young woman who'd fought off rape, was now being hunted for murder because she'd survived. "How long before you're strong enough to travel?" he asked quietly. Desane's eyes flickered with something that might have been respect. 3 days. Maybe 4 at most. "Then you have 3 days," Isaac said. That night Isaac sat alone outside under stars that burned cold and distant, the valley spread out before him in shades of shadow, his valley, his land, his carefully constructed solitude, all of it at risk now. Because he'd made a choice. Because he'd helped instead of walked away. He heard the door open behind him. Soft footsteps in the dirt. Dessane sat down a few feet away. Not close, but closer than she'd willingly come before. "You are afraid," she said. "Not a question, yes. But you will not send us away." "No, why?" Isaac was quiet for a long time, watching stars wheel overhead. Patterns that had been there before him would remain long after. 3 years ago I heard gunfire. His voice was low. I had a choice. Ride toward it or wait. He paused. I waited. Dessane said nothing. Just listened to his words. "By the time I rode in, my wife Martha was dead." He stopped. Swallowed hard. "My son Samuel, dead, Apache raid. Quick and brutal." Another pause. "They were gone before I could have helped anyway." His voice went quieter still. "That's what I tell myself. That's what everyone told me back then." He looked at Dessane. "But I'll never know for sure. Because I chose to wait. To be safe. To be smart." Dessane studied his face in the moonlight. "You think saving us will redeem you?" "No, I think it'll let me sleep." Without wondering what kind of man I am, something shifted in Dessane's expression. Not quite sympathy. Something harder. More honest. "Nita is not your wife." Her voice was firm. "I am not your son. You cannot fix them. By protecting us, I know. But you will try anyway." "Yes." Dessane stood, looked down at him with warrior's eyes that missed nothing. "Then I will tell you the truth now." She paused. "Nita is not my sister by blood. I am Se." She waited. "Do you know this word?" Isaac shook his head. "Warrior, sworn protector, bound by oath." Dessane's voice was steady. "Nita's father was chief of our band. Before he died, he made me swear." Another pause. "To bring her safely to our people. To protect her with my life if necessary." Understanding settled over Isaac. "That's why you won't leave her side." "I cannot. My oath binds me completely." Dessane looked toward the cabin. "Until she is safe among our people. Or until I am dead. And if Hargreaves takes her." Dessane's hand went to her knife. "He will not take her alive." The words carried no threat. Just certainty. The kind that from knowing what you'd die for. "How long have you been running?" Isaac asked. 6 weeks. "Since the soldiers came to winter camp." Dessane's voice stayed flat. "Since they said, 'We must go to the reservation immediately.'" She paused. "Since Nita's father refused, and they killed him for refusing. 6 weeks of running through winter. 6 weeks of cold and hunger, of being hunted like animals. And still they kept moving. Still they survived." "You're strong," Isaac said. "We are what we must be." Dessane turned to go back inside. Paused at the door. Isaac Boone. She looked back at him. "If we survive this. If we reach our steeple safely." She paused meaningfully. "I will tell them what you did. They will know you are set to us." Another pause. "Bound by honor. I'm not doing this for honor, I know." Dessane's voice softened slightly. "That is why it matters." She went inside, leaving Isaac alone with his thoughts, with the knowledge that in 3 days he'd be alone again, back to his routines, back to his carefully measured solitude. But he'd be a different kind of alone than before. The next morning Isaac woke to find Nita in the doorway, just standing there, looking out at the valley, watching the sun climb over the eastern ridge. He rose quietly. Didn't want to startle her. She heard him anyway, turned and met his eyes directly. Then she spoke. First real word she'd said to him since that fevered, "Why, days ago, this is good land." Her English was better than Dessane's, softer. Each word carefully chosen. It is, Isaac agreed. You live alone here. For 3 years now. She looked back out at the valley, at cattle grazing, at the spring that fed everything with year-round flow. It is lonely, I think. Isaac moved to stand beside her, not too close, respecting whatever distance she might need. Yes, he said simply, it is. Why do you choose this? The question cut deeper than she probably meant it to. Or maybe she meant it exactly that deep, because I don't trust myself around people any more. Isaac's voice was quiet. Because out here the only person I can fail is myself. Nita turned to look at him fully, really looked at him, for the first time since opening her eyes. You are afraid, she said. Not accusation, just observation? Yes, of what? Isaac thought about lying, about deflecting, about keeping his wall's nest intact. Instead, he told her the truth, of choosing wrong again. Of standing when I should run, he paused, or running when I should stand. Of getting someone killed because I'm too slow, another pause, or too fast, or too goddamn scared to choose right. The words hung between them, raw and unfiltered. Nita nodded slowly. I understand this fear. Her voice was quiet. When my father died, I froze. I could have fought then. She paused. Could have helped him, but I was afraid. Her voice dropped. By the time I moved, he was already dead. You were just scared. So were you. The simple equation of it. The refusal to let him carry a burden alone that she wouldn't carry herself. How do you live with it? Isaac asked. Nita looked back out at the valley. At morning light painting everything golden shadow, I wake up each day, and choose to keep living, she paused. To not let that one moment define everything I am. Another pause. That is all anyone can do, she went back inside, leaving Isaac standing in the doorway, with the weight of her words settling into him. 2 days later Hargreaves returned. This time he brought 6 men instead of 3. Not a request any more, a statement of intent. They rode up at noon, when the sun was high, when shadows were short, when there was nowhere to hide. Isaac walked out to meet them, rifle in his hands. Not raised, but not put away either, a signal that could be read either way. Hargreaves dismounted. The other men stayed on their horses, flanking him, like a statement of force. Isaac Hargreaves's voice was hard now. I think we need to talk honestly. I'm listening. I know you're harboring those women. Not a question this time. Isaac said nothing. Just waited. I know they're in your cabin right now. Hargreaves's jaw tightened. I know you've been lying to me. To James Cooper. To everyone. Still Isaac waited, letting Hargreaves play out his hand. I'm going to ask you one more time. Hargreaves's voice went flat. Send them out. Let us take them back to town properly. He paused. Let the law handle this. No, the word fell like a stone into still water. Hargreaves's jaw tightened visibly. You understand what you're doing? Yes. You're choosing to protect murderers. Women who killed one of my men. I'm protecting 2 women who defended themselves. Isaac's voice stayed level. Against a man trying to rape one of them. Hargreaves's face went red. That's not what happened, isn't it? You weren't there, Isaac. You don't know. I know Tom Werther's reputation. Isaac cut him off. I know he was run out of 2 towns. He paused. Before you hired him. I know why. The words landed hard. Hargreaves's men shifted in their saddles uncomfortably. Uncomfortable with truths being spoken out loud, Hargreaves recovered quickly. His voice went cold, calculated. So you're taking responsibility for them? He let the question hang. Is that what you're saying? Isaac thought about the question, about all the weight it carried, about 3 years of running from responsibility. Yes, he said clearly, that's exactly what I'm saying. Then you're part of this now. Hargreaves's voice went hard. Whatever happens, you're part of it, I know. Hargreaves stared at him for a long moment. Some emotion played across his face, too complex to name. Anger, yes, but something else underneath. Something that looked almost like pain. You're a fool, Isaac Boone, maybe. This valley won't forget this. Hargreaves's voice was bitter. Won't forgive it. The valley can go to hell. Hargreaves mounted his horse, looked down at Isaac, with something between pity and contempt. You've made your choice. His voice was flat. Now you'll live with it. The 6 riders turned and left, dust rising in their wake. silence settling heavy once they were gone. Isaac stood in his yard for a long time, knowing that everything had just changed, that the careful peace he'd maintained was broken now, that he'd chosen a side, and there was no going back. Inside the cabin Dessane and Nita had heard everything. "You should not have done that," Dessane said quietly. Too late now, Nita moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could feel her presence. "If we go, it will not be because they demand it." Her voice was firm. Isaac looked at her, saw the pride in her eyes. "The refusal to run when running meant admitting wrong. I wouldn't have it any other way," he said. That night's sleep, it didn't come easy for Isaac. He lay on his bedroll, staring at ceiling beams, thinking about what he'd done, what it would cost, what came next. Around midnight he heard movement, Nita crossing the cabin in darkness. He sat down near him, not too close, respecting boundaries even in the dark. "You cannot sleep," she said. "No, you are thinking about your choice. Yes." Silence for a moment, the fire burning low, shadows dancing on walls. "Why did you really help us?" Nita asked. The truth this time. Isaac breathed in, breathed out, felt the weight of secrets. "I wasn't there." His voice was quiet. "When my family died, I heard the gunfire clearly." He paused. "I was 2 miles away. I could have ridden toward it." Another pause. "Could have tried to help." He stopped, the words coming harder now. "But I waited. I told myself I needed to be smart." His voice cracked slightly. "To not ride into an ambush. To wait until shooting stopped." His voice broke. "By the time I got home, Martha and Samuel were gone." He couldn't go on for a moment. The raiders were long gone. Everything I loved was just gone. Nita said nothing, just listened in the darkness. "I found them in the yard." Isaac's voice broke completely now. Martha had tried to get Samuel to the root cellar. Tears came. First time he'd cried since the burial. Tried to hide him, but they caught them first. He couldn't speak. Just sat there, letting 3 years of grief out. She'd written something on the wall. His voice was barely audible, in her own blood. 3 words. He swallowed hard. "Don't hide Isaac." He couldn't go on. Just sat there with his grief. Nita moved closer, not touching, just close enough to be present. "You think you failed them," she said softly. "I know I did. You think saving us will balance it. I know it won't." Isaac's voice was raw. "But I have to try. I have to look at myself." Another pause. "And know that when it mattered, when I had the choice." He paused. "I didn't hide." Nita was quiet for a long moment. "My people have a saying." Her voice was gentle. "The warrior who runs once can still die bravely." She paused. "The warrior who never runs never learns courage's cost." Isaac looked at her in the firelight. "What does that mean?" "It means you already know what hiding costs." She paused. "Now you are learning what standing costs." Another pause. "Both are necessary. To become who you need to be." She stood, returned to her blankets near the fire. But before she lay down she said one more thing. "Isaac Boone, you did not fail your family by surviving." Her voice was firm. "You failed them by spending 3 years dying inside." She paused. "Today, when you stood up to those men, that was the first time you chose to live." Another pause. "Your wife would honor that choice." Then she was quiet, leaving Isaac alone with her words, with the slow realization that maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about refusing to let the past erase you. 3 days passed like the calm before a visible storm. Isaac worked his land with grim determination, mended fences that didn't need mending, checked cattle that were fine, kept his hands busy. Dessane prepared in her own way, sharpening her knife endlessly, testing the weight of Isaac's spare rifle, moving through fighting stances when she thought nobody watched. Nita grew stronger each day, helped more, spoke more. But her eyes carried weight they hadn't before, the weight of knowing good people would suffer because of her. On the 4th day James Cooper returned, riding slower than usual, looking over his shoulder every few minutes. "James." Isaac greeted him at the door. Cooper dismounted stiffly. He looked older than 2 weeks ago, tired in a way that went deeper than physical. "Isaac, we need to talk." His voice was urgent. Inside, Cooper accepted coffee, but didn't drink it. Just held the cup like he needed something. "It's getting bad out there." He spoke without preamble. Hargreaves is putting pressure on everyone now. He paused. Told the Fletcher ranch he won't buy their cattle this year. Another pause. Unless they support him. Told the Hendersons he'll call in their loan. Isaac felt something cold settle in his chest. He's building an army. More like buying one. Cooper finally sipped coffee. Made a face like it had gone bitter. Folks are scared. Hargreaves controls most of the trade here. He paused. Most of the credit. You cross him. You don't just lose his friendship. Another pause. You lose your livelihoods. Everyone's lining up behind him. Not everyone. But enough. Cooper set the cup down. Isaac, you need to understand what you're up against here. He leaned forward. This isn't just about those women anymore. Hargreaves has made it about authority. He paused. About who runs this valley. Isaac nodded slowly. He'd known this was coming. Had felt it building. More Cooper's voice dropped lower. And you need to hear this, even though it doesn't excuse anything. Go on. Cooper looked at Nita and Dessane. Then back to Isaac. You know about the raid 3 years ago. His voice was careful. The one that killed your family. Isaac's hands tightened on his cup. What about it? Caleb lost someone that day, too. Cooper paused. His wife Ellen. Same raid. Same morning. The words hit Isaac like a physical blow. He set his cup down, afraid he might drop it. What? Ellen Hargreaves. She was visiting the Peterson homestead that morning. Cooper's voice stayed steady, helping with a berth. The raid hit there first. He paused, then moved on to your place. She was killed in the first attack. Isaac's mind reeled. Hargreaves. Caleb Hargreaves, grieving and broken, living with the same weight Isaac carried. I didn't know, Isaac said quietly. Most folks don't talk about it. Cooper leaned back. Caleb sure doesn't. But old Reed told me yesterday. He paused. Said it broke something in Hargreaves. Said he came back from finding Ellen's body different. Another pause. A different man than the one who left. Cooper leaned forward again. I'm telling you this because you need to understand something. He paused. When Hargreaves looks at those 2 Apache women, he doesn't see people. Another pause. He sees the face of everyone who took Ellen. He paused meaningfully. He sees a way to hit back finally. Isaac looked at Nita. She was staring at her hands, understanding enough to know it complicated everything. We both lost someone that day. Isaac's voice was slow. We both have the same wound, yes. But you chose to live with it. Cooper stood. Hargreaves chose to let it eat him alive. He moved toward the door. I came here to warn you properly. He's planning something. He paused at the threshold. Don't know what yet. But he's gathering men. Making promises. Another pause. Building toward something. How long do I have? Days. Maybe a week. Cooper met his eyes. Not more than that. After Cooper left, Isaac stood in the doorway, staring out at the valley. At land that had seen violence before. Would see it again. Dessane came to stand beside him. This changes nothing, she said firmly. I know we can leave tonight. Be gone before he comes back. Isaac shook his head. If you run now, you'll run forever. He paused. And I'll be right back where I started. Another pause. Alone with ghosts I can't outrun.